do want to apologize ahead of time. I might not be as uh, I've been up since 8 a.m. Friday morning because I had my youngest son who's medically complex. He's at the hospital right now, and so we've been dealing with that. So like my preparation wasn't what I wanted it to be for this reading quite, but I really wanted to do it and looking so forward to the hearing Eliot and Jane reads. So it'll be a little restoring after the few days I've had here, I think. All right. So as both the featured readers are here, and I see the individuals that signed up for the open mic, I think we'll just go ahead and get started. People can um, join as they want. So with that, I'll go ahead and welcome to the 14th installment of the I Think I Can't Speak for Everyone Here reading series. It's a reading series for writers, people who have written, are writing, or should be, I think, should be writing. The poetry is my way of kind of timing the crow with that wristless watch. This is a writer's space, so vignettes, silences, singing, poems, excerpts from novels, stories, anything from that part of you that writes down the world. Feel free to share it. You can direct message me on the chat to sign up for the open mic if you haven't already. Whether reading or not, you can keep your camera on or off, of course. I do ask that you keep the audio off when the readers are reading. If there's something I need to know that I'm not seeing or whatever, you can just drop it in the chat. Afterward, if you have any questions, requests, or comments, you can direct them to me at bluejawedsnake@gmail.com. I put that in the chat along with a couple of links to Jane and Eliot's work. Um, Readings will be on YouTube um, within a day of the reading, and I'll share that at that time too. I put the YouTube channel in the chat as well. With that, I'll go ahead and introduce the first featured reader. I usually go alphabetical by first name, which I think I forgot to tell you guys. So Eliot's reading first. Eliot Cardinaux is a poet, pianist, composer, and translator working at the intersection of the lyric and improvised music. The author of On the Long Blue Night from Dos Madres in 2023 and the trio of Quiet Labor, Toy Elegy, and This Music from Another Room, as well as numerous chapbooks. Cardinaux has produced over a dozen albums of original music, including American Thicket from Loyal Label 2016 with Mat Maneri, Thomas Morgan, and Flin van Hemmen. Pavane from Bodily Press 2022, Out of Our Systems, Bodily Press 2022, and most recently, Imminence, self-released in 2024 with percussionist Gary Fieldman. He is the sole founder and editor of the Bodily Press. I came to Eliot's work via Instagram and then through their collections, Take One, Letters to Appletown, and On the Long Blue Night. What I like about Eliot's work is how it kind of makes the offhand feel instilled, and then the instilled feels as if it's from kind of a clay past. And with that, I'm super excited for you to hear Eliot read. I'll go ahead and give him the spotlight.
Thank you so much, Barton. I just want to say I also encountered Barton's work on Instagram, I think through Tom Snarsky, who's ubiquitous on Instagram for posting a lot of different poems by various poets, but I have a number of Barton's collections. I think the most recent one that I have is Wasp Gasp. And like Barton, I'm also from Ohio originally. I haven't lived in Ohio in about 25 years, but that connection has meant a fair amount to me, you know, much more than you'd think for an Instagram connection. But I follow Barton's work really pretty closely as he posts pretty much every day. So I want to say thank you to Barton for hosting me, and thanks also to Jane, whom I have not met or encountered, but I'm very excited to be reading alongside someone that I'm just meeting and hearing for the first time. So I'm going to read from this chapbook that I wrote called Island. It's kind of hard to see. I wrote this shortly after a sort of strange housing displacement of not so romantic origins in Denmark, in Scandinavia. And I wound up coming back to the States very unforeseenly. unforeseeably, and I wound up staying for a while at a place that was offered to me on Grinnell Island in upstate New York. And so these poems were written over the course of about a month on this island, which you couldn't reach except by boat, and just kind of contending with this sense of having been a little bit dropped on my behind. Um, and yeah, just kind of reckoning with this notion also of not really having a set place that I was living, or I guess you could call it kind of itinerance, especially after having tried to move to a foreign country across the Atlantic, and just the ensuing kind of processing that unfolded. The chapbook is kind of a result of that. Um, so it starts with a dedication to whom, if not you. And I guess the you could be either undefined, or it could be literally you, or it could be some kind of a secret you that the reader is not fully privy to. And there are a few epigraphs. One is by Friedrich Hölderlin, the German poet who sort of acquiesced to the madness that was sort of placed upon him by his community. There's a new book out, Hölderlin's Madness, by Giorgio Agamben, that kind of talks about this. And it had me thinking a lot about sanity and what it means to be deemed uh, either sane or insane, and how we react to that. So the famous quote is Hölderlin, uh, when sort of in this asylum, would just tell everyone nothing happens to me, and would talk about how the world itself was not his to contend with, and this sort of like withdrawal from all things worldly is a big part of what that quote, and really the quote is just nothing happens to me, es geschieht mir nichts. And there's another quote from Edmond Jabès, who wrote the Book of Questions. That's a Jewish poet writing after the war in French. There is a lamp on my table, and the house is in the book. And so now I'll start by just reading through these poems, and hopefully it won't go on for too long. I belong to it. I've been thinking about whether poetry might be what is ugly transmitted through the gray light of truth into something beautiful. Positivity and negativity describe an account in which vanity snags on meaning. When the balance is low, my book begins to fall apart. A book of rumors, fear of the other I'm trying to reach. A perpetual book, it was written for no one, much like you. I am ballast, terror in its music. Potential. I am tired, tired of carrying you around in my heart. My pockets are stuffed with tickets, buses, trains. At every chance, I empty them. To live on an island now, before the wind can take me. I stretch out my legs, though the bed is cold, colder than yours. To write through the gray day empty, slow, in anger, a much heavier dance with the dream. Oddly, other is how. I've been thinking about poetry as madness and maddening, as my body, stripped of the world, in its madness, resorts to the bare gray word of you. My mouth still flashes in abyssal hope. But poetry also soothes when the you knows how the I feels. Counter prayer. I can't but get the feeling that you're praying for me. Approach me at the edges. You will never reach me. In the movement orbiting our separation, prayers go unanswered. To read the sign once it has passed. Left alone. I've been thinking about the poem as a house of ejection, from the object of desire to the subject of concern. a warning not against the leap, but against the given. The road, a condition of empathy, a gift that is not yours to give. Yard work. It goes away because you close your eyes. Tomorrow, wake to a steeper curve, to what ends and to what denies. The crystal empty, the sky below. Betweenness. I've been thinking about how poetry might be time to think, time to dwell, planning, one foot in the weeds. How direction means momentum, inertia, overcoming. To plod without plotting a longer course, walking further into lost. To catch at each figure a foothold, sustaining the melody, threading whatever form. Replay. With each regret, I imagine you fulfilling a daily task. A sad sigh in your eyes. I find no inspiration. The next frame gone blank against the room. From room to room in this world, from poem to poem in this house of our just beginning, I hear something of a music long in the distance, the sound of your name, a whistle in the dark. The speaker. I've been thinking about the poem as fishhook and wound. Isolation, a good teacher, not a good friend. The way I betray in releasing my sole confidant. Unresolved, one can go on impossibly breathing, splayed out on the dock in the sun. Island 1. Where from your peace of mind to incongruent wounds? When the wind rises, now, forever. Can they hear us? They cannot hear themselves. The noise from the journey overwhelms their speech. And who has called them? We have called them nothing. Their names rise out of the fog. And what is like a flame? The bullets are burning for cold, clear water. And what is a congruent wound? Both the absence of wounds and the presence of wounds. And what is personal? The dead and the living neither upend nor destroy what is caged. Whence freedom comes? It goes to church on Sundays as it pleases. Was history invented? To pay the chronicler's wages. And what of the explication? Only madness withdraws into the features of the vanishing world. And the foul note? Not waiting lasts a lifetime. Where does it land? To revisit the choir whose soothful singing cannot comfort the newborn stranger. What unkindness flits across the sky? Waves hurtle green upon the rocks. And what of the road? The sky changes rapidly over the river. Do they taunt you? With caring on my birthday in the face of totality. The motivation of insects? To have sonatas written in their honor. And why dragonflies? The blackness of the blue of their eyes. As lake flies cling to every surface, the sun does not shine. And as the dog barks, you have brought me no less entertainment to lay at your feet than uncertainty. What is the question? How best not to answer? Silent tide. Things are done. The wind dies down. To whom am I speaking? The air, the silent bugs against the dead blue water sky. What is in my power? finally fleeting, ongoing in closure, invisible in certain company. My question nodded so deep. Island 2. And wisdom, song feigns a sovereign faith. If the positive encounter with negation, the bitter yes. What time is it? It's sunny, but it's night. The moon is like the sun tonight. Have you dodged a bullet? The wind goes right through me. Are you self-sufficient? Removing lint requires no instruction. Do you have everything? I need more of others than property allows. Your dirty laundry? I am awaiting the right season. Invisible labor? Goodness pure. And the thought of alcohol? An unproductive sunset loosens the tongue. To keep your head down, transition rooted in the wage lets out a cosmic scream. And what is in the mirror? A buoy hovers at the fortification. A hard sound? To snag on the soul's hatch, a trapdoor, one wing of a butterfly. An end to migration? Summer hesitates at the lazy threshold. Birdsong assumes the form of texture. A metamorphosis? Trees in their way travel long distances. And what of the city? Song squeaking slides down the handrail of light. To keep despair away, the bass line shakes its head with a pounding heart. To voice the chord, roots whisper how long till the blossom comes. If the ice returns, the sun holds still relative to you. And the enemy, I see him often in my lover's eyes. He deals in distance. An attack of nerves, church displays the figure of music. Where the bombs fell, the rain falls even now, and life goes on. Silence knows its hero in the back room of myth. To wash your hands of it, the discarded piles up relative to absence. Sleep, and the work will be there. What is the answer? What best not to ask? And there's two more poems. Morning. I've been thinking about the poem as island, lying between question and answer, being and becoming. The house on the hill beyond a boundary, distance becoming form. West and east surround and destroy a middle, pathogen and grain, a small excess escaping. The mind and imagination long for a hatch. The hatch is open. Rumination given to infinitude rests. Upon waking, the shell of each action is broken. Home. Sentimental morning, fatigue. The land around me grounding against my will. Taut sails, oblivion, too long for the stasis of perpetual motion. Cars blowing past around the median. O purple flower, tenor and pain, to have it bad and have it not be good, to have it never finished. And then there's this sort of epilogue, which I don't think Joe is here today, but Joe's birthday is coming up. This is for Joe Iani, poet that I also know from Instagram. It's called In Evidence. I've been thinking about poetry, sworn secrecy and kinship as witness to no one. A little stanza under the end. And that's my reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. That was beautiful. Thank you for um thinking of the poem, for snagging on meaning, circled separations and strange housings. All thank you for being here today, and thank you for that beautiful reading. Now, with that, I will go ahead and get to our second reader, Jane Stevens Rosenthal. Is an award-winning director and poet. Her work has been described as lush, melancholy spirituality that makes everything worthwhile. She is raising her daughter in Los Angeles and currently working on several projects, including a coming-of-age feature film. She also publishes the essay poetry Substack, Poetry for the Mornings, at www.poetryisforthemornings.substack.com, which I also dropped in the chat there. I came to Jane's work also via Instagram, and then through their Substack, Poetry for the Mornings. What I like about Jane's work is kind of how it makes a what was of the what is, for how it paces in an odd future at the speed maybe of our current stillness. And with that, I'm super excited for you to hear Jane read.
Thank you, Barton. I love, Eliot, that you read from a chapbook called Islands, because I so often feel like I'm on an island and then there are these bridges that are these poets that remind me I'm not, and you're all here. And Barton, you've definitely been a bridge, and I love your work so much. And I mean, I'm starting to love Instagram for the poets it's giving me. Adam is also a poet from Instagram, who has been another bridge. So I'm going to read some very old work, and then some new work that is from a book called On Conception at the moment that I'm sort of working on piece by piece. How some of it happened. Split open by the record player, the doors, the dream, the bed, last spring, touching the wall but not each other. Los Angeles was still burning. LA woman was missing. Your mother's earring lost between thighs in a car, sitting on a lap in the back seat, drinking another gin and tonic, had come loose. That was a poem for my mother's earring that I lost 20 years ago. Over and over, she would dream herself pregnant. Taking someone's last name, she stops in the heat, letting the men watch her, pulling her socks up. Be wise, Young preached, and do not let the right hand know what the left hand doeth. His followers dressed as Indians, Powell's men gone missing. She ordered a stake, her heart doing a two-step, leaning its forehead against her chest. It had been a terrible mistake, how they had rushed to bury the dead, the wagons round up, the men almost at the end of the canyon separating. She dreamed her mouth bloody, spitting one tooth after the other into the palm of her hand, sitting on the floor of a bar, the sink made of porcelain, the blood running down her chin, still looking for something to worship. A group of drunks gathered just up the hill. This is a poem for C.D. Wright. Wanting to make a name for herself, she takes her dress off. Just wanting to be touched, she dreams of the river. Wiping the dust from her forehead with a finger, she practices saying her own name. A poet dies in her sleep. There is snow in the mountains, an animal leaving its scent. And God will say yes, and God will say no, and God will say yes, but not now. And God will say no, but I've got a better idea, standing in front of the mirror, looking for change. And here are some new poems that I've never read to anybody before. So you guys are the first. I had wanted to be an offering, something that fit into the mouth. In the movie, she says, "How was it?" And in the movie, he says, "What?" And she says, "Death." And he says, "It's okay," as if he might still be in it, as if he had not quite returned, the fish's scales catching the sun's light. I worry I am leaking amniotic fluid, my breasts filling with colostrum, the day looking like rain. I was a woman long before I ever was one, an animal passing through the night, but we don't see it, just what it left, a patch of fur, some excrement, my niece bending down to look at it. A theme appeared as faithlessness, the dreams fishing in the place where the Indians were massacred. The legend goes, their blood turned the land red. I had lost myself trying to conceive. Hare, hare. I had brought myself forward to slaughter. I had grown slick with desire. Postpartum. A week after leaving the hospital, I think you'd have to be crazy to want to do this all over again. But at 7 a.m., I find that I do. Falling asleep in the shower, the water so hot, I forget we are in drought and I become just skin and weather. Are you reading? My mother-in-law asks at dinner, my daughter just shy of 2 weeks old. And I say, yes, a book about New York. So I have to stop every few sentences to recover. And we cackle, a memory on every corner. The pool hall unhoused and gone. Yaffa, my boyfriend, who always took me a different way to the train. The restaurant upstate that served us banana cream pie and alcohol underage. The vintage store where I bought a shirt that was all buttons and a pair of boots that when I wore them, all the men whistled, and I couldn't help but wonder what I would have been like had I been born taller. Upstate, where I only saw the artist again once, and he was feeding the vending machine quarters, his girlfriend hanging all over him in the neon, and I had forgotten how his change had clattered and rolled all over my floor, but not how he hung my artwork up on the wall or how he stepped back. It was only years and years and years and years later that I learned it meant nothing. The train blowing its whistle out in the night, the beds pushed together, the magnolia tree bursting into bloom in front of his dorm, the professor who circled us on his bike, always surprised to see me coming out of the library, looking me up and down and smiling before I realized my dress was see-through and how I wish I had never sold it. And it is not in the first week that the incision gets infected, but in the following, when one begins to forget. The doctor's first words, "Oh my God, Jane, she's so beautiful." The skin hardening like a rope beneath my fingers. There was the before and there was the after, and I didn't want to forget anything. I didn't want to forget the way Michael slammed his elbow into the table upstate, hitting the nerve and shouting, "Fuck, I'm alive." Postpartum 2. At the pediatrician's office, they ask, does the mother have any of the following? Substance abuse issues, a lazy eye, a religion. The sky was so beautiful in the canyon, I wanted to stop and show my daughter, this is where your mama wants to be buried. I have three more, if that's okay. This is for Mary Caldwell Schroeder, my friend who I miss. It wasn't the birth that was the initiation, it was what came after. The heat breaking, the cloud cover, the eggs cracked, the laundry folded, drinking yesterday's coffee, looking up how to reduce milk supply, which breast to offer. I miss the way the Colorado would turn one's clothes red, my grandmother's nightgown stained coming out of the water, the moon sliced in half. Making camp next to the rapid, the newlyweds went over and the wife disappearing, only to be found years later, her eyes violet in some small town. The pandemic still raging on. I become convinced that something is seriously wrong with the baby, a separation on the inside. Watching the doctor turn her this way and that. He was so open we thought he wasn't wearing a mask, looking deep into my eyes and saying, this is a very healthy baby. And for a moment, I got a foot in the morning's hands and lifted myself over the depression that lay there in the dirt and the grass. I miss drinking Sapporo in the rain in New York. And I say to my husband, Isn't it strange that there was a body before the baby and there's a body after the baby, and only you and I will ever know? That in many ways I had become a canyon and there was some grief there, and I couldn't help but think of Mary. I wanted to tell you everything. Like how in New York, I always forget what year it is, standing in the shower on Mott Street. I wanted to tell you how motherhood had made me lean, how Efren said once, when you smile, you are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, bending over the pool table and lining up a shot, and how I thought of it often, suddenly standing in front of your body, a body that had known mine, the morning breaking over the Brooklyn Bridge and neither body pretending not to know the other, which was a relief in a way, to not pretend that nothing mattered before this moment. On a path down to the bay, the water still too cold to swim, my daughter collecting seashells, my mother holding her, my ring slipped from my fingers. How the last time I ran into a body that had known my body, surprising it across a field, the rocks red with the past's blood, the singer had leaned into the microphone and said, I don't know what to play anymore, so here's a song for Jane. All of them high on mushrooms except the drummer who had to go to church in the morning. The body's wife leaning into mine and saying, I know you want to dance, taking my hand and pulling me in. The deer hopping in front of the car all the way down the mountain. My husband and I fighting for days. I loved how time could bend, and for one moment I could be 22 and still an actress, believing it might work out. How I wanted to ask if you liked Los Angeles now and tell you that I only dream of the apocalypse. A bombed out mall and a woman hissing, just take it, handing me a tennis skirt, begging me to put it on. I had only ever told one person I had wanted to be a monk, the ceiling of the movie theater leaking. I had been falling in love with the man I thought he might become, but never did, turning to me and saying, you'd make such a great one. You are so gentle and soft-spoken. Not sharing a bite of his ice cream. The priest on the screen tattooed with wings. And the only person I ever told I wanted to be a truck driver was my husband, and he said, me too. And still, I was longing to be blessed, even though my daughter had my eyes, even though grief still turned mine green. I have one more, but I can stop there.
More, read more.
Okay, it's quick. August was everyone's favorite month. The past was your hand in a box of stone fruit, your wrist wrapped in red, the desert kicking up dust. I thought I might love your father, cheeky smile, unflapping devotion, stretched out on the couch in the heat, trying to catch whatever breeze was blowing east off the ocean, his robe draped around him, the TV on, fast asleep. As I crept by, my heart in your mouth, my heart left in your mouth. The heat was my God for a while, having been born out of religion. I had learned to love the desert, the Mojave, the Sonoran, the Colorado. I usually turned right on Dillon, but this time we drove out, abandoned gas station, abandoned church. I couldn't help but imagine my daughters walking to school among the creosote and the mule fat. The moon is their anchor, rising large over the small town there, the sky bursting with stars, and you lifting up my nightgown, touching my hip, asking who I was in your sleep. And I photographed myself in a dress I never wore again, slipping from my shoulders. Before I was married, before I had children, I came to believe in the desert, in the desert, in an eye.
Thank you so much, Jane. That was beautiful. Thank you for, yeah, I mean, forgetting, right? It's like an after death instead of an afterlife. Um, thank you for us still being in it and for those beautiful words. And with that, I had just had one person for the open mic, who I'll go ahead and introduce. If anybody else wants to do the open mic, just throw it in the chat and I'll get to you. Next. And with that, I'll go ahead and introduce. Sorry, I gotta find where they are. Well, maybe not. Okay, so actually, I don't see them. Is Niev Timmons here? Nope.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, my thing isn't displaying correctly. Yeah, if you just want to unmute yourself and you can go ahead and read. You can even give yourself the spotlight.
Yeah. So I'm going to be reading 3 poems. And they're about being crazy and sex. So do with that what you will. Yeah, so I'm going to start off with this first poem, To bring you out of your self-made hermitage, to have you drip and radiate in the ombre dress that sticks to everything that has been idle in your closet too long, to break in your new clitoris with my mouth, feel the quakes as I tear you asunder over and over and over again, to stargaze while huddled and entwined as you and me reimagine and enumerate numerous realities and timelines between us that feign closeness yet remain untouchable, to confluence, to erode, to subduct. And this next poem is called Thistle, and I need to take some water before it because it's only 2 sentences and it's pretty long. All right. Maybe I was enamored by you before we started talking. Maybe I get lost in which name you're using now. Maybe I find your quiet, shy softness of your voice endlessly charming in juxtaposition to your bold anarcho-syndicalist politics. Maybe you knew how infatuated I was with you. Maybe I loved how attracted I was with you. Maybe I think insurrectionary anarchism isn't going to save us. Maybe I still feel that attraction for you. Maybe no one actually fucking likes Deleuze and Guattari. Maybe I'm endeared by your ex-twink faggot, trans feminine drag. Maybe you're still that little bird. Maybe I'm haunted by how hard and deep you kiss me. Maybe I incessantly process my feelings for you that it strained my other relationship. Maybe we'll commiserate on our suicidal tendencies. Maybe I shouldn't have fucked your ex after we broke up. Maybe you regret giving up on me while dating 5 others. Maybe you'll give me that bass lesson. Maybe we would hurt each other like we've done before. Maybe I'll see you at your bookstore co-op job where I visited you too much. Maybe I just long to run my hands through the waves of your hair. Maybe mullets are overrated. Maybe I obsess over you because you were real once. Maybe I'll see you here near the queer land commune you once told me of. Maybe I'll feign interest so I can see you laugh once more. Maybe I'll be genuinely interested this time. Maybe our conversations will turn to kissing. Maybe I'll kiss you. Maybe I'll kiss you. Maybe that kissing will become something more. Maybe our septum piercings will catch on each other, forcing us to stay close. Maybe we won't kiss and I'll get lost in the hollow entrance of your eyes. Maybe I'll throw you against a wall in a frustrated longing. Maybe I'll shove you to your knees and make you suck my cock somewhere overlooking the sound. Maybe I'll suck you off where no one can hear. Maybe I'll say how I actually feel about the abolition of time. Maybe I'm so caught up in the idea of you that I dated someone else for 2 miserable years just because they reminded me of you. Maybe I'll give it into these fleeting chances of being with you. Maybe I'll hate seeing you again. Maybe we'll be something more than we actually were. Maybe I'll want that. Maybe will you? I yearn for the disaster that could be us. And now a poem about the 2 miserable years that person. It's called No Matter How I Try. I can't write a poem about you. Here are some things I do know. We were hungry for the longing we couldn't give, no matter how much I tried. I laughed with you when I vomited after sucking your dick. You're the only one who can claim that from me. You worked on your van when I tried to kill myself, overdosing on meds while you were fixing the same engine problem. Working on your van was another way for you to escape. I said nothing when I walked past you, working on your van. Was I an escape from your ex who strangled you when you wanted attention? I escaped you when I wanted support and you couldn't give it. How many fights of repetition do we need to make us work? I lost count after a few months. You threatened to sleep under bridges when I said I needed more attention. You don't love me ad nauseum, yet you said you needed me. I snarl, agitated at the prospect of more of you. You never understood why I tried to kill myself, suffocating in the quagmire of us. Tie me up, I'll squirm out. Alone, drowning in surgical fluids, where were you? I've tried writing this, it never works. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Nia, for that. Thank you for you know, as always, anyone writing the poem, one can't is the reason for that. So thank you for being part of this, everybody. Thanks for being part of this today and for being here. I'm super glad that I drove from the hospital for this hour and going back. With that, I did want to read a poem for the open mic. It's a poem by Kelly Allen from her collection, Leaving the Skin on the Bear. And the poem is called Passing Obedience Around in a Moon Skull. The women said, you can have a daughter. The women insisted there will be a big scene. The women begged, don't mention the snakes. That's the way it is with problems. Spreading the blankets over clover changes so little, but ground can be stubborn, often swallowing its own worms back down before the mallards arrive, and sometimes after they offer their eggs as collateral for a meal needed and shared. In the afternoons, the youngest boys let their penises wag against the wind, looking up, watching for large birds. Only mothers can convince such curiosities, such brazen baby men, about shame. The men said, temples of fingernails stay clean. The men boasted, these big hands break shoulders. The men hissed, there is enough in the sack to make two. That's the way it is with marriage. Mating for life is a sentence without bars. Travel to the water glass and see what swims there. You should know by now, bedsides are just gutters for familiar pleasure. In the evenings, the smallest girls string clay beads into nets they will cast over their beds. The smooth roundness teaches the hair to grow slowly, the back to curl and uncurl throughout the short night. Only fathers know how to close their eyes while swimming in such a current. When the town's sleepers join hands, palms cupping palms, the lot marks one more day in a year, one more chance to listen when the chorus repeats, you can't walk home with an empty belly. And with that, thanks all for being here today. I'll let everyone get out of here. Again, the reading will be up on the YouTube channel either today or tomorrow. And love y'all. Have a great night.
Thank you.